Welcome to the Etsy Conversations podcast, featuring inspiring interviews with Etsy shop owners, hosted by Ijama Elazu.
Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of the Etsy Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Ijama, and I have with me today, my guest is Jess. Jess runs the Etsy shop, Jess Crafts Shop. Yay, I said it without twisting my tongue. And Jess is a new seller on Etsy, and so I'm really happy to talk with her because she's been crafting for a while. She just started selling, so I think we're going to get a really good viewpoint on from a new Etsy seller. She opened her Etsy shop on April 15th, 2014, which is perfect because you just missed taxes for this year. And she's made 14 sales and has 11 5-star reviews. So, Jess, you're doing great. Hi, Jess.
Hi.
Welcome to the podcast. Thank you for being my guest.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
Oh, great. So, can you introduce yourself to us?
Well, I live in New Jersey, and I'm 26 years old. I've been crafting since forever, but when I was about 16, I discovered paper crafting, like scrapbooking and card making. And so I've just been kind of trying to evolve and grow that talent for a number of years. And I really got heavily into card making in the past probably 7 years or so. And my friends have always kind of encouraged that. And I had a craft club that I started in college. And so crafting's always been a big part of my life.
Wow, you started a craft club?
Yeah, me and a friend of mine, she was a knitter, and we started the Arts and Crafts Society at Rutgers, where I went to school.
Wow, that's great. You're really gung-ho.
Yeah, we kind of started getting together by ourselves, and they were like, we could make this an official club, and Rutgers will support it and give us a little bit of funds and send us on field trips. So, we just went at it.
Wow. Do you know if the club still exists now?
I know that it did for a couple of years after I left because we helped the next people kind of understand all the process, but I don't know if it's still there.
Okay, well, good for you. Do you still scrapbook?
I do.
Oh, wow. Yeah, most people who get into scrapbooking just never leave.
Yeah, I do different kinds of scrapbooking. It's kind of evolved over the years, and I do it less now because it takes more time to me. And card making is more of like a stress relief thing, where scrapbooking, I guess I feel a little more pressure to make sure that, my stories are told and that it will be looked at 50 years from now by my kids and appreciate. I don't know. I just feel a little more stress around it.
Yeah, that's fun. I used to scrapbook, and you're right. I got stressed out by it the first time I did it, and I because we did it in a group. And have you gone to a scrapbooking party?
Yes.
So you know how those go. I said never again. But I enjoyed it, but I couldn't do it with the group. It wasn't for me. Not the group thing. So when did you first discover Etsy?
I discovered Etsy when I was in college, maybe about 2008. And I had bought a couple of craft supplies on Etsy, and some of my friends were aware of it because, like I said, I hung out with a group of crafty people. So.
Okay. And right now, what specifically do you sell in your Etsy shop?
I sell handmade greeting cards for a number of occasions. And I also sell a couple of digital stamps, which are basically like little images that you can color in. It's kind of just been something I've been dabbling with a little bit on the side, but mostly it's the handmade cards.
Okay. And now you just opened, your shop has been open for just over 2 months. What inspired you to open the shop?
I had been selling cards to friends for a number of years. Like we would, particularly college friends, we'd get together a couple times a year, and they would always ask me to bring my handmade cards and purchase them from me. And they kind of just always were encouraging me to start an Etsy business with it because one of them had kind of dabbled in Etsy before. So I just kind of bit the bullet and did it. And It was partly inspired by the fact that I had a week off for spring break. I'm a kindergarten teacher, and so I had a whole week off, and I was like, let me just take this week to really research it, because I always thought, oh, it's going to be so hard, and is it really going to be worth all the time? But then I said, you know what? I just need to give it a shot.
Yeah. Oh, very good. So what type of preparation, and I'm so glad we're getting you in the beginning, because this is a really good stage to learn. Did you do any type of preparation before opening your shop? Like, are you familiar with the seller handbook?
I am. I looked at that a little bit. I do what I do for most things. I look on YouTube. I learned so much from YouTube about crafting. And so then when I wanted to learn about Etsy, I went on YouTube too. And also I listened to this podcast.
Really?
This is actually a big way that I learned a lot about Etsy, by hearing different sellers' experiences. So right before spring break, I have a long commute. And so right before spring break, I just kind of like binged on this podcast for a week to just see what different sellers had to say and see if that would give me some insight.
Oh, wow. That's really good to know. I'm glad it was helpful to you.
Yeah, that's why I was so excited at the chance to speak with you, because it's been such a helpful podcast for me.
Oh, nice. So then, can I ask, were there things that you wanted to know that you didn't get from listening and from watching YouTube videos?
I mean, it's hard to answer because I wasn't really sure what I wanted to know.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense.
So I learned a lot. I learned things that I didn't know that I even needed to know.
Okay. Okay. Well, that makes sense. So how do you manage your time between working full-time as a kindergarten teacher and then running your Etsy business?
Well, it's a little bit hard to answer now because I'm off for the summer. So I don't have as much time management issues. So it'll be interesting to see as the school year starts up again how I'm able to manage that time.
Oh, okay.
But I did have the shop open for a few months before school was over, and crafting's always just been something that I do. I already would make the card and take a picture and post it on my blog before I started my Etsy shop. So that process of photographing my cards was already something I was doing. So it actually works out okay because most of the process is just part of what I did anyway.
Oh, okay. Excellent. Do you foresee that? Well, I'm sure once the school year starts again, your time will definitely be divided. But do you foresee that it's going to take a chunk of time away from what you've been, how much time you've been spending on your Etsy business?
I'm sure I'll reduce the amount of time, but I've also been kind of trying to think ahead and plan for the future with my Etsy business. Like, I'm working on some Christmas cards now because I know that I might not have as much time when it is time to list holiday cards. So they aren't appearing in my shop right now, but I'm building that stock.
Oh, very good. And yeah, I'm glad you said that. That's one of the things I think a lot of sellers are doing right now, especially in the summer, is preparing for Christmas. I think most people don't realize the onslaught that comes at Christmas time. So good for you.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I learned from the Etsy Conversations podcast. A lot of them would mention how during the winter months things would pick up a lot. And so it let me know to plan ahead and think ahead.
Yeah. You know, I'm glad it picks up a lot for Etsy sellers, but then I think ahead, I'm like, oh, great, nobody's going to want to talk to me around Christmas time because everybody's going to be so busy. So I don't know what I'll be doing at Christmas time. So what inspires you when you're making a new card? How do you get the ideas for your cards? Because your cards are there's so much variety and you put a lot of detail into the cards. I'm looking at them now.
So I participate in a lot of challenge blogs, and that kind of gives me my inspiration because the challenge blog will be asking for a certain color combination or using a certain brand of stamps. And so it usually acts as a jumping off point for me for a card because they'll be saying, oh, could you use this particular stamp company and make a card and let's see what it looks like. And kind of everyone gathers their cards together in a link list And so a lot of my inspiration just comes from the different challenges. But I've also worked with some manufacturers, and so I'll kind of start with their product. Like right now, I work with Newton's Nook Designs, which is a clear stamp company. And so I have to make a certain number of projects for them. And I've used their products before I worked with them, so I find them very inspiring anyway. But now it's kind of decided for me that I need to make a project with their stamps. And so that's where I draw my inspiration.
Oh, okay. These challenge blogs, just so I understand, and for anyone who doesn't understand, so is the idea behind it someone comes up with a goal that everyone has to meet, in a way, I guess, create a card with a certain theme, and then everyone shares their creations, and then they give you parameters that you create the cards?
Yep.
Around.
And sometimes there are prizes offered where they might random draw, or they might pick the card they like best and an award a prize. And certain manufacturers in the paper crafting industry, people who produce paper or stamps, will host challenges, and they'll give away, their products as a prize.
Oh, nice. Okay. How do you find the challenges that you participate in?
I mean, I found them slowly over time because, like I said, I've been doing this for about 10 years, and I've had a blog for a good number of those years as well. So there are lists out there. You could just search card challenge blogs or scrapbook challenge blogs if you're more interested in scrapbooking, and there are some websites that kind of gather them together. But I also always go to my favorite companies and look to see if they have a challenge, because I already have their stamps. So I want to have a way to use them and possibly win more.
Wow. Excellent. Man, you just don't know certain things if you're not in that zone. So this is all new to me. I like it. Do you spend any time looking at Etsy shops that sell greeting cards or things similar to what you would like to offer in your Etsy shop?
At the beginning, I spent a lot of time looking at those. That was kind of part of my research. And I did it mostly to see how they priced their cards. But then that was a little tricky for me because I am seeking more to support my hobby and support my charity work more than to make a profit. I don't ever envision this as supporting me.
Okay. Oh, nice. Okay, so, and since you mentioned it, let's talk about that, because a lot of what you do is for charity. You support lots of different charities. And was that the motivation behind opening, or part of the motivation at least, behind setting up your Etsy shop?
Definitely. Because I make a lot of cards for Operation Right Home, the materials kind of add up over time. And so the cost of the materials. And so I wanted to find a way to offset that. And also, I have to mail the package of cards to them. And, especially with the way postage went up at the beginning of this year, I had to kind of fundraise for that.
Okay. So what charities do you support?
I support Operation Right Home, which sends blank greeting cards to military personnel overseas. And they also send what's called Any Hero Mail, which are letters or cards addressed to military personnel, but not any particular person, just to kind of encourage them and support them and thank them for their service.
Oh, so you send the blank cards to the military personnel, and then they're able to use them and send to their families?
Yeah, because there's no Hallmark in Afghanistan. So.
Okay, yes.
Kind of think of it that way.
Yes, you're right. Oh, okay. Very nice. And now, how did you decide what charities you wanted to support?
I was making cards for a number of years and just kind of accumulating them. My friends would purchase them, I would give them out as gifts, but I had a lot more cards than I knew what to do with, essentially. So I started looking for people who might want the cards. And I found Operation Right Home. I've found cards for hospitalized kids. And there's another card drive I participate for Valentine's Day called Cards from the Heart. So I was just on the lookout for different organizations or individuals who were looking for greeting cards so that I could make use of my hobby, essentially, rather than just kind of piling them all up and feeling like, what am I doing this for? I really was able to give a purpose to my activity.
Oh, wow. That's excellent. That's excellent. And I like that, that's part of the mission. A big part of the mission of your Etsy shop is not so much the profit, but to support the troops and kids in hospitals. So keep it up. Have you so far had any bad experiences on Etsy?
No, a lot of my sales have actually been to people that I know in real life already. So I haven't had as many experiences with individuals I don't know. So I don't know if that's kind of skewed it a little bit.
Okay.
But I've overall had positive experiences.
So when people come to your shop, okay, wait, let me make sure I phrase this correctly. Do you tell people that you have a shop on Etsy and then they go and support you, or are these people who knew you were making cards before and ask you for a card and then you say, okay, just buy it through my Etsy shop? How does it work?
Mostly they already knew that I was making cards.
Okay.
Like a friend came to me recently and wanted a shark wedding card. And so she wanted something, really special and custom. So she asked me if I could do it. And I asked her if she would just purchase it through my Etsy shop instead, just so that way I could kind of build up that business and let other people know that I am able to do custom work and see what I'm capable of. So that way when they have a special need like that, they know that I'm available for that.
Okay, good deal. Good thinking. And right now, how are you promoting your Etsy shop?
I promote my Etsy shop along with promoting my card making and blog in general. So I have, like I said, I have a personal blog. I have a Facebook fan page. I have an Instagram. I have a YouTube channel. So a lot of different methods. And I use Pinterest a lot too.
Oh, wow. You're everywhere. How do you manage all the different social media outlets?
I just enjoy doing them. So it's like I was already on Pinterest and Facebook anyway. So I'm just now posting my products on there and my card making on there. Because I'm a Pinterest junkie as a crafty person. I'm sure we kind of all are.
Yeah.
And so I just really enjoy sharing my work. That was my main motivation behind the YouTube channel, is that I wanted to be able to encourage other people to start card making as well and bring some awareness to Operation Right Home.
Oh, very nice. So, do you talk about the same thing across all your social media channels, or like on YouTube, you'll show how you're making a card and you'll talk about where it's going and who it's going to, but then on Facebook, will you have a different focus, and on Pinterest, or do you try and keep it uniform across the board?
I think it's generally pretty uniform across the board. There are times where on Facebook, particularly, I'll share a link to my Etsy shop. And also when I pin things, rather than pinning them from my blog, I pin them from my Etsy shop. So most people who are repinning my cards are probably other card makers who are interested in either being inspired by it or making their own version of it. But then I figure, they also have friends who aren't into card making, and if they see my card and they like it, I'd rather it be an Etsy shop link than just a card link to my blog, because that way they can actually go and purchase it.
Right. Okay. Makes good sense. So about how much time each week are you spending on your Etsy shop? And I know now it's different because it's the summer, so you have a bit more time. The Santa will probably be different once the school year opens. But right now, on average, how much time are you spending?
If I'm thinking about specifically what I do for Etsy, maybe 10 or 15 hours tops, because I don't count really all the time that I make cards being for Etsy, because I don't sell them all on Etsy, and also that my primary purpose for making them isn't necessarily for Etsy.
Right.
So not a lot of time, and that's why I think I might be able to maintain it when school starts.
Okay. And I meant to mention, I'm going to have all the links to Jess's, her blog, Facebook page, Instagram, YouTube. So if you want to go and check out what she's doing, they'll be in the show notes for this episode. So Jess, in the couple of months you've been on Etsy, have you made any connections through Etsy, like business connections or otherwise?
No, not particularly.
Okay. Are you familiar with the Etsy teams?
I am, and I haven't really been active in them yet, and I think I probably should more so take advantage of that resource. But with really trying to start my YouTube channel over the summer too, and I actually just recently got back from a week-long trip overseas. I just haven't had that much time to dedicate towards that because my priorities have been a little bit different.
Okay. All right. Well, you have all the time. I mean, going forward, because you're still new. But yes, teams you've probably heard a lot of other sellers get a lot of benefit from the teams. Yeah. So when you get a new idea for a card to make, other than the blog, the blog challenges, the challenge blogs, how do you get inspired to create something, and how long does it take you from when you get the idea for a new card to actually making it to putting it in your Etsy shop?
Well, I've noticed with the Etsy shop, it's better if I make a card that is very specific as opposed to general. So if I make a dog birthday card as opposed to just a birthday card with flowers on it, people are more likely to find my card and pick my card if they're looking for something specific. So I do try to keep that in mind when I'm crafting, and I love to use different critter stamps already in my design, so it's very easy to be inspired that way.
Okay.
And I will make the card, and it depends on the kind of techniques I'm using, how long it takes. If I'm doing some intense coloring, it could take several hours to make a card. Or it could take less than an hour. It depends on the kind of card. And I always try to make sure that the cards that I list in my Etsy shop are the ones that are a little bit more unique or special. Mm-hmm. Or I like to make sets that are a little more simple, but that way the buyer can get a better bargain.
Okay. So you hand color all your cards?
Not all of them, but the stamped images where you see like little critters, usually those are colored.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow. That's a lot of effort.
Yeah. Well, it's therapeutic.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's true.
Like, there's probably a lot of people who liked coloring in kindergarten, and I guess I was one of those people. I do find it very relaxing after a long day, especially at work.
Yeah.
To just color.
Yeah, you're right. Coloring is therapeutic. I forgot. I don't know if I should confess this openly, but I bought a coloring book to color because it is relaxing. When do you find that you ever get in a creative rut?
Yeah, usually when I'm really stressed out about work. So the beginning of the year is really difficult in kindergarten because I'm dealing with kids who've never been to school before, and so they're very, very needy, and they have a lot of difficulty adjusting to school sometimes. And so their stress kind of becomes my stress because I don't like seeing them that way. And so sometimes when things get a little bit crazy at school, it kind of shows where I'm in my crafting because I just can't find the relaxed point that I can create. But then I try to just kind of force myself to make something or force myself to sit down and color because it is relaxing. And if I start getting into the process, I'll enjoy it. Okay.
Yeah, I never thought about that. But yes, you probably do get the most nervous kids because that's their first time away from home. So that is in itself its own stress. I didn't think about that. So what is one lesson so far that you would say you've learned the hard way on as far as selling on Etsy?
I don't know that anything's been particularly hard, but I did realize that I shouldn't just list any card on Etsy, that I should kind of curate the cards that I make towards the audience of people who are looking for something truly special. And so I want to make sure that the cards that I list there are my more unique and special cards.
Okay. So do you gear it towards, like you mentioned the animal cards, do you gear them towards a specific type of buyer, like someone who owns pets or like wedding cards? How do you pick which ones you're going to put in your Etsy shop?
I like to think about what occasions people might really be looking for a special card for.
Okay.
Because I don't think that like there's just certain occasions that I think you want to get something unique for, like a wedding or a baby shower, a first baby, something like that. You might really be looking for a special card for that occasion. And also, it's a little bit tricky for me because with Operation Right Home, they're not in need of every kind of greeting card. So if I'm going to make a wedding card, I'm not going to be able to send it to Operation Right Home or cards for hospitalized kids. It's just not something that they need.
Right.
So I need to make sure that when I create that card, it is probably something that's going to be appealing to my Etsy buyers. Otherwise, I will just have that card.
Oh, okay. I see. So Jess, okay, being that you just recently opened your Etsy shop, if there's someone else out there who's considering selling on Etsy, what advice do you have for that person?
I would tell them to do a lot of research, think about what do you really want to sell, and what are your goals? Do you want to make a profit at this? Because then you need to make sure that the kind of product you're offering is something that could become profitable. I don't think every handmade thing can become profitable because even just my cards, like some of them take 30 minutes, some of them take 4 hours. Am I ever going to make 4 hours worth of money off a card?
Right.
Probably not. And so I would say, just know what your intentions are going in and know what your goals are going in, so that way you don't feel disappointed, because I think that it can be really easy to be disappointed and discouraged, because when I would go with my box of cards to my friends, I would leave and they've bought 10, 15 cards. And in my entire time on Etsy, I've sold that many. So obviously it's a lot slower to start, and you might not get as much interest as you think you will at first. And so just kind of be aware of that.
Oh, that's really good advice. And I'm glad you mentioned that sellers ought to know their goals, because, not everyone comes on to sell for the profit. And that's really important. So that's a good point there. So far, if you had to pick a new feature that doesn't currently exist on Etsy, what would it be that you would like to see the folks at Etsy implement?
I think I'd like to be able to connect my videos to my Etsy shop. So that way people could see what it takes for me to make a card, and that way they might understand why it costs so much. Because I think there are some people who feel like, why do you think this card is worth $4.50? Because that sounds like a lot of money for a greeting card, because they're like, oh, I could just go to the dollar store and buy a card or whatever. And if they were able to see the process of making cards, then they would probably appreciate my craft more.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. And I say it all the time. I do think video is so valuable. And I'm glad you have a YouTube channel. And anyone who wants to see how Jess makes her cards, I'm going to post links to her YouTube channel and all the other social media accounts, so you can hop over and take a look. Jess, what's something you would say that you're doing now that's really working well for you?
I think the best thing that I've done, which I've kind of mentioned before, is making cards that are specific for people, that somebody's more likely to look for. If a lot of people have themed parties for their children, and so they're looking for something very particular, something that's really interesting to that child or to a friend, and to think about the product as something that is going to make someone smile, and really, like, you want something to be really unique that you're offering on Etsy. And so I think that I've done a good job of making sure that the cards that I offer are unique and special and will make someone feel special to give it and feel special to get it.
Yeah, very good. Now, if anybody wants to reach you, what's the best way they can get in contact with you?
If they visit my blog, they would be able to get the links to all of the other places that I am. I can be reached pretty easily at email, which you could find on my blog.
Okay. And
my blog.
and just for everyone listening, Jess's blog is jesscrafts.com. Mm-hmm. That's JESSCRAFTS.com. And I'll have the link there. Jess, thank you so much for sharing your experience on Etsy. I'm really glad to talk to you, especially since you're just beginning, and to learn the story behind your Etsy shop. I appreciate you taking the time to be on the podcast.
I thank you for having me. It's been a great experience.
Oh, good. And if you want to get in touch with Jess, again, I'm going to have all her information on the blog post. You can also leave feedback on the blog for Jess to see, and I will talk to you again next week.
Thank you for listening. You can subscribe to the podcast in iTunes, and while you're there, please leave a review too. Visit convome.com to leave a comment or feedback on this episode.